I'll be the first to admit that I took this bike on the wrong trail. The 2019 Specialized Stumpjumper EVO Pro 29 is not really a bike that's meant to go on long cross-country rides, but that's kind of what I did. I rode this bike on an 18-mile loop that included just as much road and gravel road as it did single track. That being said, it didn't do a bad job living the cross-country life. On the Greenbelt path through Ketchum and then some dirt roads, I didn't feel like I was driving a trophy truck on city streets. It just felt like riding a bike. And I was actually happy with how efficient it felt. The super slack head angle didn't seem to bother me that much on the climbs either. And I should say it's not very much like my normal bike I ride every day. I ride a large Norco Sasquatch, which is a fat bike, but I put a set of 29 plus wheels and tires on it. So it's a rigid bike and definitely not at all like this Stumpjumper Evo. But it didn't take me that long to get used to riding this bike. I've also never ridden a bike with a coil shock. I've been doing some research on coil shocks and I've been very intrigued by them, wanted to see how it rode, see if it was something I would want. And the benefits that I saw from the coil shock were definitely real. The rear end of this bike was very planted, climbing up over roots and rocks on loose dirt. There was just tons of grip. The rear end really stuck well during the climbs. It also stayed glued on the downhill too, which was kind of the downside for me actually. I actually liked the coil shock more for climbing than I did for descending. While descending, I'm not, like a Brendan Fairclough or one of those guys who gets crazy and gets air and hits things hard. I like to maybe get my bike tires off the ground for a millisecond, but then be back down on earth pretty quick. I also like to try to do little mini manuals and just goof around on the trail. And for me, it was kind of tough to do those things with the coil shock. So while it felt like I could go fast on this coil shock and it just stayed planted, for me, that's not maybe what I want my everyday bike to do. I'd like to have this bike maybe as a second bike. That'd be a lot of fun. And maybe it would complement my current bike really well. So I did have a lot of fun riding this bike. The front end and the back end didn't seem like they matched up all that well. The back end was very supple, very planted. The front end of the bike, maybe just in comparison, was just a little more bouncy. I think most of that has to do with the tires were maybe pumped up a little more than what I would normally run. So we have a lot of reverse mullet bikes now, and this one was just a mullet bike. So it was just party in the back, just supple, fun, and then business in the front. It was a little more bouncy, a little more serious. But I mean, you probably take this with a grain of salt. Again, I'm not like, I didn't have a big ride on this bike, just a quick little loop. And I've also been riding a lot of rigid bikes. So, but overall, I felt like this was a very fun bike. It fit me well. I'm just over 6 foot. I think it's about 183 centimeters. And I was riding the size S3, and I felt like it fit me very well. Also, I loved doing Outerbike. I was in the Sun Valley Outerbike, and it was great. The guys at the Specialized tent and the girls at the Specialized tent were awesome to deal with. They helped set me up on this bike real quick. Talked to them about what I wanted to ride, and they hooked me up. So definitely worth riding this bike. If it were me, would I buy this bike? That's a tough question. The bike is $6,700. So that might be a lot for me. I would maybe look at the Evo Comp alloy. That's less than half the price. Well, I guess a little more than half the price. But I could take that money that I saved and I'd probably maybe upgrade the wheels or something like that. And then with the extra money, go on a trip. So Specialized Stumpjumper EVO Pro 29, not a bad trail bike. Definitely not. I don't think it's one of those bikes that you have to be using on a lift or shuttling. Pedaled really well and fun overall. Again, for me, I don't think I'd want the coil shock. I'd rather probably have an air shock. But get out there and go demo one. It's a fun bike.